You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 451, our breakdown of episode 6 of the Andor series entitled The Eye. Or, if you're answering the question that's on the screen and was posed this week, did Andor make the right choice? And hopefully we'll get to the bottom of that. He had a couple different choices, actually, in this episode, so I'm curious as to which one we'll answer. But I think the big one is the one that, of course, happened at the end. So, um, hey, Jonesy, I was going to say something that was not appropriate, but thanks for being here tonight. How are you doing?
The real question was going to be, who is going to be Albert's guest host tonight on the show?
Exactly, yeah. Jonesy's with us. How's it going, man? How are you feeling after this episode?
Man, should we have named this episode The Eye of the Storm? A little too much, huh?
Yeah, probably on the nose a
No,
little bit.
I'm flying high after this episode. This episode was, man, everything we had hoped it would be and maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, for the folks who were looking for a lot of action and a lot of, razzle-dazzle special effects, maybe I could see where maybe they were let down a little bit compared to the craziness that Star Wars can give us at times. But I thought for the series, I thought this was absolutely perfect. I mean, it helps that you and I were right a lot this week, not to funnel our own egos, but we were right a little bit this week. So that felt kind of good.
Yeah, we were wrong too.
We were also wrong, but we
we
were also right. So they wash out and we come out ahead.
Yeah, man, I really enjoyed this episode. I think I said this about what was it, a Kenobi episode maybe, where I'll watch an episode a few times, but this is one that I've watched probably more than any other episode so far, and even in the short period of time that it's been out. I mean, we're doing this less than 48 hours after it's aired, but it is an episode that is just gripping, and I mean everything about it worked in a lot of different ways. But more on that in just a second. I mean, we'll get into kind of our initial thoughts and really break down all of the stuff that we saw. And I've got some questions at the very end. Not in addition to did Andor make the right choice. I think there's some open-ended questions now that are really intriguing for me personally that hopefully you guys will enjoy as well. But before we do, did we have any news?
There is lots of news out there, but I have not grabbed any because things have been so chaotic at work. So
That's okay.
I apologize. But yes, there has been news. We will gather it all up, and maybe for the Patreon show or maybe for next week's show, we'll be able to do a quick recap. But want to make sure
we have a lot to discuss on this show.
Yeah, we got a lot to get to tonight. So how about we get into the Patreon subscribers, and a huge thank you to Mike, Kathy, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, and Jackson. Also wanted to extend a welcome to Daniel, who signed up about a week ago, and I kept meaning to toss his name in there and say hi and thank you. He signed up for the, oh boy, I can't remember, the green milk tier. So thank you so much, Daniel, for signing up. And then, of course, our Delusions of Grandeur tiers. Rod and Gene, thank you guys so much for contributing. Everything you guys put into us goes right into the show. And we are looking forward to setting up an episode later this month where we bring everyone in or bring some people in like we have in the past from a certain point of view. I guess we need to figure out a topic, Howard. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
I have one. I have a few.
We've got a whole
backlog.
We got a whole backlog. Yeah, I forgot who it was. It was either Rob or Rod. Sorry, the one letter difference escapes my memory. Hey, what all do you have in mind? I'm like, it's a list, brother. It's a list. So we've got no shortage of content to go back and do. Anyway, so thank you. Be on the lookout for that. That will be coming down the pike very, very soon.
Yeah, exciting stuff. All right. Well, let's get into this episode because there's a lot to talk about. And just kind of to recap, this was another episode directed by Susanna White, who I thought outdid herself on the last episode, but this was
incredible,
another level. I was not expecting it to given how good the last one was. I didn't think she could do even more. So kudos to her. Written by Dan Gilroy. He's been, I think, the writer in the last 2 episodes. They've kind of been this kind of run this arc. And I did want to point out,
you can tell it's kind of a team though effort going on here.
Yeah, for sure. On the producers, Tony Gilroy, Kathleen Kennedy, who's not getting enough credit for this, in my opinion. Diego Luna, of course, we knew he's got his whole heart and pocketbook invested in this. But then Michelle Rejwan, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time here, but I'm seeing her name pop up on so many things now. It's very similar to the way Kathleen Kennedy used to be in the '80s, where her name was popping up on a lot of different things. And I started thinking, I don't know this to be a fact, but I wonder if she's not taken her under her wing, and she is going to be eventually the, successor to Kathleen Kennedy in whatever capacity that may be.
Right.
Not saying she'd take over Lucasfilm or anything like that, but she seems to be on a very similar track that Kathleen Kennedy was on during the '80s, and her name is tied to the Bad Batch. A number of she was uh, the, uh, the Rise of Skywalker. She's done a couple things for there's a big bad robot as
Okay.
well. So her
Yeah, that
name's
was
out there. It's
my
not just Disney and
okay. That was my next
Lucasfilm.
question. Is it just Star Wars, or is it all of
Mm-mm.
Lucasfilm, or is it even bigger than that?
Yeah, I mean, she's kind of really close to Star Wars right now, given the success in Disney Plus. I think they brought her in for that, but yeah, she's got her hands in a lot of different things. So
Makes sense.
all
I
of it,
mean,
yeah,
KK is still young and vibrant, but she is getting longer in the career, so
right,
starting to identify people for succession planning. There's
yep,
no time like now to start figuring it out, because as we're finding out in my own company, we are having a CEO change due to retirement next year, and we are doing it what I believe is the right way, and you get this really good warm handoff, and it makes everyone feel comfortable with what's going on.
right. Rather
And
than just an email saying, "Oh, we switched."
yeah, that's a huge deal internally to people, especially
Hmm.
with as up and down as things have been at Lucasfilm, at least from an external looking in, and probably a bit from the inside too. So these types of things, if this is what's going on, always a good thing if they're already working on it, even if it's several years away.
Yeah, and that's pure speculation on my part. I'm just
Yeah.
kind of reading my own tea leaves here in what I'm seeing, but
You
nonetheless,
speculate on something, my
I
friend.
know, right? Man, I built a whole show on this thing.
Mhm.
But okay, so give me your initial thoughts. What did you think about the episode specifically? I want to know what you thought about the eye, because this is, probably the most intriguing piece that we've been anticipating for quite some time now.
The eye was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I could have just imagined being on the ground and witnessing this type of event
Hmm.
is just is just so inspiring. And I thought it was really great. One of the shots had the Imperial soldiers right there with the Aldhani folk.
Oh
And
yeah, and they looked as enamored as the Eldani were,
they did,
or the
maybe not
Donnies,
as
yeah.
spiritually or emotionally
Sure,
connected to it, but just the
right.
awe of it. And you kept hearing it through for all of, even when, things were getting chaotic and they were going to go to the vault. And well, we're going to miss the eye. You're like,
Yeah,
it's a
I
big
have that
deal,
in the
right?
show notes because it caught me. I laughed because no, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No, it's
that just made me chuckle because I had that same reaction and it stood out for me. But
yeah,
sorry.
it was just really cool. Visually, it was almost like fireflies, and that it kind of got ramped up a little bit with the the shooting star, like the asteroids coming down or meteor. I don't know I always get confused which one it is, but it's it was just really really cool. And again, the violent nature of it when they got up into the sky definitely just added to the suspense. And while we didn't necessarily concern ourselves with our heroes, but it definitely
Sure.
was. It sort of added a little bit of drama to it. But man, this thing was just filled with suspense. I mean, start to finish. We got a little bit more with Vel. We got confirmation of Vel's relationship, but we also got Vel's hesitance a little bit, and so I'm interested to dig into that a little bit. And Skeen. We got a lot to talk about with Mister Skeen as well. And I think,
Get me
and
dirty, man.
right, and the reason why I kind of posed the question of did Andor make the right choices, because he did have multiple choices this episode.
Yeah.
And when I started rewatching this episode, when we talk about skiing, I had more questions about whether or not he was setting some of this stuff up really early on, to where something like this was going to be a choice decision of what he had to make, or what he was setting
Mhm.
Andor up for too, to kind of feel it out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we'll talk through some of that. But anyway, what were the standout moments for you? How was the eye? What was besides
Yeah.
everything?
I mean, it was the word in my own show notes. I had celestial, right? The celestial event of sorts.
Yeah,
You could understand why they were so enamored by it, and everybody wanted to see it, and why, although Aldani was probably not the first choice for a number of people in the Empire to be stationed at, right? But for this one thing, it was a big deal, and I think that plays into the last episode about how Gorn was able to take advantage of that, right? He knew that this was the perfect event for everything, as a distraction, to a way to pull attention away from what they were doing. It just seemed to all line up, and it made sense. I think visually, it was an amazing job. It's something we've never seen in Star Wars. I mean, we were intrigued from the very first time we saw this and trying to figure out what the heck was going on. But some of those moments, just the coloring and the TIE fighters heading up, some of the camera angles, watching them swoop up and into it, and then especially when that trawler is like in the midst of it all, right? When Nimic is screaming at him to climb, and he starts climbing, and he's in the thick of it.
Hmm.
I mean, you just look, it goes so by so fast. But when you watch that back and you watch it in slow motion, there's so much going on that it's just visually stunning what they've done. So
Yeah, really.
I mean, you can even see it in the back of our little thing right here. It looks just so amazing. So
I
enough
couldn't
about that.
not
But
use this for our title card this week.
yeah, right.
It was just so
So,
beautiful. Yeah.
the visuals were awesome. Everything about it, like I said, technically speaking, was just sound. Directing, writing, the the music itself, the acting again. It had some twists and turns that I was not expecting, which was is always great. I think I was very curious. I was very curious as to how they would react in with prisoners. Like how were these rebels going to act when they had prisoners and asking them to do things? And I love the fact that they took their time, or they were very conscious of not trying to kill anyone, right? They're not there yet. These aren't the Saw Gerreras. That
Well,
would have probably been a different picture
maybe that's a discussion
until,
we can have. Yeah.
yeah, until things got risky, right? When
Yeah.
Kemsey came in, which I thought his character, by the way, was awesome. Like finally somebody who was like, it's like Deidre Mir. I mean, the Empire gets a lot of crap for making stupid mistakes and being fat and lazy and allowing people to walk through. Well, no, there are people out there that are like, no, this is not right. And he's one of those characters. And he didn't give in, didn't give, he was persistent in what he was doing to figure out like something just didn't feel right. And he knew it. Right. And of course, I think he's dead since Andor shot him. But I did like the
Uh,
fact that there wasn't somebody.
I thought he'd Oh no, I guess he did get shot.
No, the audio description says Andor shot him and then he falls over, but well, I got questions about who lived and who died because that's completely unclear to me. Even some of our heroes, right?
Right.
Which is going to be interesting if they should they have survived. So let's see what else. The tension, the way it built up was great.
I loved seeing inside the TIE fighters. That was kind of cool.
No,
Although I have a little bit of a problem with some of the TIE fighter the footage, like inside the cockpit.
mhm.
But it was kind of cool being able to just see a little bit around a little bit.
Oh, I have. If you, I don't know if you saw the show notes, but
No,
uh,
I'm
it's in
flying
all
blind on
caps.
show notes, so it's great.
What's that?
I'm blind on the show notes. I haven't looked at them yet today.
Oh,
So it's
okay, yeah. There's the Aldhani Air Command. The only thing it says, the only bullet in all caps is loved everything shown here and inside the cockpits.
there you go.
Because like you said, I mean, yeah, we've had shots of the cockpits, and I'm not saying we haven't, but those are insights into things that we just, if you play the video games, sure, fine, that's one thing, right? But being able to see that on screen and seeing them pop in there and getting adjusted and
Slightly
tweaking
different angles
controls.
and slightly different angles of everything too, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
it was familiar yet a little bit different. So it was kind of cool. They always seem much more spacious in the more recent content when it comes to TIE fighters. They
Yeah,
just seem
they
so
always
much
seem
bigger.
real like claustrophobic kind of thing at first. But we can talk. I think there was one small issue I had. Maybe it's the same one, but I don't want to get into that just yet. But yeah, so let's break this open. So the first question I have is I don't know if you caught this, but it starts with Terriman and he's in the background. Have you noticed what he's doing?
No.
So he's got like what looks like a stick. I don't know I don't know what this is. This is superficial, I know, but it bothers me because I went back and watched it over and over again. But it opens, it's that morning of the event. Everybody's getting up, they're pouring coffee, cap, whatever. And Terriman is standing in the background. He's got like this stick and he's like jabbing it into the air, like purposely jabbing or doing something with this thing in the air. I cannot figure out what the heck is what he's doing. I went and turned on the audio description, and it says that Karam is quote having a conversation in the misty dawn. He's not around anybody, and
Right.
he's not talking to anyone. So I don't know. Okay,
He's got a loose, maybe he's just practicing his lightsabers.
all right.
Maybe he's talking to Qui-Gon Jinn.
If that's got to be. So if you know what he's doing, or you can come up with a better, go watch him if you missed it, and let me know because I'm dumbfounded in terms of what he's doing. Okay, so that aside, a little funny thing aside, he says I'm struggling to understand. Thanks. I'm struggling to understand why my faith doesn't call me. I believe in something. Why am I so unsettled? And so this is where we get a lot of Nimic up front, which is good.
Yeah.
Very interesting character. It sucks that he died. I think we had said he would die,
Yeah.
And then when he lived, I was like, oh, well, I guess we're wrong. But then he died, and I was like, yes, we were right. And I was like, wait, no, I mean, no, don't die. We
You've
wanted you to
never felt so
live.
conflicted, right?
I did feel conflicted, but the writing's on the wall. I mean, I hate to say this is what Star Wars does, but these characters that we tend to, invest our heart and mind into, they usually they bite the bullet first.
And he took the time to talk about Andor, not Andor, right? in his manifesto, his what did he call it? His what was his name? The role of mercenaries in the galactic struggle for freedom.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, that just rolls right off the tongue. I mean, it's just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
He just launches right into all of these things. They're just a tool, and I guess we're the ones wielding the tools, so everyone is useful. So he clearly is just trying to come to grips with it of how this means, and his view of the galaxy and how everyone fits into it, and how everyone fits into this rebellion. You can just tell he's still very naive about how it all works, but he wants to figure all of it out too. And
Yeah.
you're right. There's a lot of depth to these characters that think rather than just point and shoot, right? And a lot of them just kind of point and shoot.
Sure.
And so it's really interesting that he actually took the time, and he's kind of fixated on Cassian, saying, why is this person here? And he's still glad he's here too. And then that's the interesting. He clearly he's hurt by the admission from last episode, but he's able to say, you do have a purpose. I'm a little upset with you about it. But I also think there's more to you. You can kind of hear it and see it in his head that there's more to Andor than what Andor wants to lead him to believe. And that's kind of what he's choosing to believe. And, we get some confirmation of that at the very end.
Yeah. This whole conversation, this whole role of mercenaries in the galactic struggle for freedom, it's interesting because it in the subtitles it has it listed with quotes, meaning this is some kind of a chapter or a section that he's written within the manifesto. So if anybody missed that, you wouldn't know either way. But the last line of "let them see how an insurgency adapts." So I haven't talked to you about the Patreon, but what I'd like to do is I do want to talk about manifestos, just a high level in how they relate, and then I kind of want to bring in. And we've talked a little bit about this, about doing a show, something like this, but I want to roll in. I was saving it for Saul Guerrera, but I think it'd be interesting to do it prior to Saul Guerrera coming on screen. But I do want to talk about terrorism and talk about the rebellions and the perspective of that, right? And I want to kind of roll in some of this manifesto stuff and what manifestos can do for people, how it can ignite people and um, bring them into an ideal in that way.
Right.
And this was kind of signaled, right? I was thinking about it back in that episode when he said, he tells Andor, you're the perfect person. You're exactly who I'm writing to. Not quite there yet, still disgruntled, probably needs some kind of a motivation, something to open their eyes. This is exactly who I'm writing this manifesto for. But there was an interesting piece in there where he said that he said you're half right. Um, they don't have to. You mean nothing to them, Cassian telling Nemec that you mean nothing to the Empire.
Yeah, the Empire.
And for me, I think that
they
was
don't play by the rules because they don't have to.
right. And I think for Cassian, for me, that was kind of a cool moment because I felt like he's going to at some point do that. He's going to try to mean something to them, right? He wants to be significant in their eyes, and the only way he's going to do that is going through this whole thing that he's about to go through, which is becoming a rebel, right? Because if that's the only way they're going to get them again by that definition, taking it literally, but if the only way they're going to play by the rules is to be important, then they have to make themselves important, and the only way they can make themselves important is through rebellion and or getting their attention and killing innocent people. And again, I'm not saying Andor. I think Andor may do this, whether he and realize okay, that's really not me, but I think there are going to be some unfortunate eggs that break here before we're all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it's a great exchange. I think this is something that, and within the context of all of this is Nemec is having a hard time sleeping, and he doesn't understand it. He's like, you know what? This is what I believe in. This is the moment. Why do I have all this, basically this anxiety of not being, I should be at my calmest. I should be focused. Like this means nothing to you, and you sleep like a rock. How can, and you'll just get to walk away and you'll be fine. Why am I having such a hard time with it? And so it was really telling when Andor, tells him when everything kicks in, whenever the excitement goes on, that adrenaline starts pumping through, and it's effectively what he's saying.
Yeah.
you're going to forget all about that. All your fatigue, your tiredness, your doubt. You have the job to do, and everything is hitting the fan, and you just got to do what you got to do, and you'll forget nothing. You'll sleep after all of this is over with.
Right.
Of course, a bit of signaling there, but he was going to take a long dirt nap.
Long dirt nap, yeah.
Right, but it is what it is. But I like that Andor gets in his face though. And what was the exact line that he had? Because Nemec basically makes an accusation about him
being okay with all this, or not being bothered by it, I guess.
Yeah, something like that, or being satisfied, or something to that effect. I wish I'd written it down, but and Andor gets real close and he's like, does this look like I'm happy? Does this look like I'm satisfied with how things are, or I wish I could think of the word because it was really good writing, but still, it was just very telling of more Andor saying, you don't know who I am, and don't try to push that on me. And Nemec, to his credit, he backed off. He didn't apologize, but it was kind of a soft apology, I think, in there too. That he gets it and he overstepped his bounds. So
I think that's when he said, "I'm glad you're here." Like, either way,
regardless, you're welcome here.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the Imperial garrison, because I think we got some pretty cool confirmations here. One, I thought it was interesting that originally that they said it was 15,000 people. It dwindled down to 500, and now on this evening they had 60 people total, which is,
well, they started with 500, and then they set up these little taverns along the way. I mean, it to an extent is kind of brilliant that's how they're dwindling people down, by giving them those distractions and appealing to their to people's interests and getting drunk and whatever else it might be, but also just the slickness of the Empire. They don't have to kill everybody. They can use certain other levers to pull and dwindle this thing down before they just push everyone out. And again, they've been retraining them anyway to say, you're not going to watch this up here anymore after this year. You're going to have to go watch it way downstream, as the official watch party kind of thing.
Yeah, it is. It's the dilution of culture is what they're doing, right? They're washing out their culture. Like, over time, 50,000 to 500, now it's 60, and then it's none. Like you said, they're not even going to be allowed to be there. And that is, we know there are other examples, and I meant to go back and look at some of them in Rebels. I know there were some particular societies that the Empire had done very similar things to, and taking away their culture, taking away their beliefs, washing them out, and then eventually it does turn into slavery. And I think I don't know that we were talking about these group of folks as being slaves at some point, slave to the Empire. I think we were more focused on the Ferrex group, but I think we got confirmation with Gorn saying that their intent is to help them, make them build what they've got, all they got planned, right? They've got bigger plans for this planet. And when they posed that question to Gorn about how the people would react, he very stoically said, "I don't have a choice,"
right?
Which is true. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's interesting. It is consistent with what the Empire is doing here. I want to talk quickly about this Commandant J-Hold, and was it Colonel Pedigar?
Right.
There was a lot of people that were expecting this big engineer to be somebody that we were familiar with. Turned out it wasn't, and that's fine. I thought this guy did a pretty good job. At first, I think I was questioning why was J-Hold so kissing up to him. I mean, outside of the fact that he's a colonel, he seemed like he was going over and beyond. The way he was talking to Gorn about things, just didn't. I mean, he's kind of an a-hole to begin with, but
especially if he was an engineer, right? I'm assuming this is the engineer that was the special guest, right?
So. Yeah.
So that was a little bit confusing and well, but I like the character though. I mean, it was kind of the quintessential character. I love that his wife put him in his place too, like when he's getting dressed, And,
J-Hold?
Yeah, like just the compression on his belt must have been stored wrong. She goes, "No, you're just expanding." Like, that's fantastic. But the way that he puts down his family, and he there's always something wrong with his son, and all of that, and he is very self-centered of, well, you want off this rock, and this is what it takes. But again, I don't what the appeal of this colonel is. I'm not quite sure. The colonel seems to see through the BS, and Gorn lays that out for J-Hold, pretty clearly. That's not what appeals to him. Appealing to his vanity is not going to get you what you want.
Yeah.
And of course, J-Hold's like, well, it's not going to be for lack of trying. So one way to do things, and that's just to sugarcoat and blow smoke and hope that gets you where you want. And we're seeing a trend with the Empire being really that arrogant that they can just appeal to everyone's vanity to move up. And there's a few that it doesn't really work all that well with, although Colonel seems to buy into a little bit of it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a little bit later in that scene where we kind of understand why he's kissing up to him. When he's talking to his wife, who was named Robata. That was kind of a weird name, Robata. He mentions that Pedigard is the one that he makes the call on who stays and who goes,
Right.
right? And so I don't know how long J-Hold's been there. Oh, I guess he's been there 7 years. He's been there with Gorn the entire time, but
Yeah.
you know, his wife is probably like, "We got to get off this hellhole, and there's nothing here." And I mean, what kind of a life is this for their kid? And so, yeah, I mean, and in some ways, I think he's doing it for his family. Is probably not the first and foremost reason, but probably to placate his wife more than anything.
That's exactly what it is.
Um,
Yep.
but the other part of it is for him personally is him getting into a bigger, better assignment. Bodes well for him moving up in the ranks too. Um, so, anyways, that's kind of where all that went.
What do you think about switching subjects a little bit? What do you think about Gorn speaking Aldari or Aldani rather? That was I thought that was kind of cool.
I did too. I mean, on one hand, like it speaks like he's the only one that could probably get away with something like that. You know what I mean? Like it would be suspicious if somebody would speak it and had only been on the base for a year, right, or a couple
Right.
of
Yeah.
years.
Being there
You
for
know,
7 though, it makes sense that he would have picked it up over
yeah,
that
7
time.
years. He's probably got the basics down. I mean, we know it was more than just the basics because he was not even translating,
Right.
correctly on purpose.
Do you think the chieftain knew what he said that he did
He,
not
he
say? I mean, he
I
sure
think he
looked like
did.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, his facial expression was like, "That's not at all what I just said. What are you
Right.
talking about?" But yeah, and the fact that he'd been there 7 years is probably the excuse, but I think it speaks to him being in a relationship with somebody like that. So he'd have to have learned the language.
Right.
Maybe not.
They don't necessarily ask the how or the why you learned it. You just kind of picked it up over time. It's easy to dismiss because who in their right mind would want to smell, what they're doing? And the exchanging of the pelts was an interesting, gesture, I guess. And I had some questions about that too. I think I've answered them myself for the most part, but
Um, there is a quick scene in here where we get some more analog tech, right? Nemec's reliance on analog tech, I think, is we got to see that in action. Although, it did come back to bite him, and I think that's what Andor was saying was like that's Imperial tech. So even though it is probably not used as much, that did come back to bite him because they were able to tune into that signal.
yeah, they still had the wavelength is still there, right? Just because it's point to point doesn't mean you can't intercept it. It's just you probably have to get either dumb lucky like they did, or you have to be looking for it on the
Right.
same
And of all the
frequency.
people, the only person that probably would have been able to find it is somebody like Kemsey.
Yeah, and again, that was probably a bit of luck. We don't really know if he was scanning the channels or if something was wrong, so he was trying to figure it out, or if that's just a byproduct of his, troubleshooting or whatever it is. But yeah, it was yeah. I mean, but again, it makes sense why they had it, and it was a good plan
Mhm.
because the likelihood that they had someone like that or like that, they were taking the Empire a bit for granted. Because again, they view the Empire as this really arrogant machine, and it absolutely is to an extent. But they got where they're at, and that they have certain capabilities that you still can't underestimate. And I think that's something that this team learned a little bit of a lesson on that one. We'll see how well they learned it, though.
Yeah. What do you think about getting Terraman's background as a stormtrooper?
That was interesting. I'm curious if, and so this is where I wanted to come back to is Skeen. Do you believe him? First of
No,
all,
I don't.
you don't believe that Terraman was a stormtrooper.
Oh no, I believe Terraman was a stormtrooper. To me,
Okay.
that makes that for me firmed up a lot of things in my head
Okay.
about Terraman's character.
Yeah. I mean, and at first I didn't believe it. And then I was like, well, you should have seen Cinta when she learned because they wiped out her family. And again, like you were
Mhm.
saying, we got a little bit more of that backstory. But the reason why I brought it up though is because I think Skeen, I was wondering if Skeen was already starting to plant the seeds of like, hey, these people really aren't as good as you think they are.
Mhm.
And planting those seeds of him and Andor having some sort of getaway
Right.
and what he ends up proposing at the very end, just sowing some seeds of doubt. And if it comes about, cool,
Yep.
I've laid groundwork. If not, no damage done. no problem there. And Skeen, the more I look back on some things, it certainly seems like he's feeling Andor out for this very particular reason to see, what does he bring to the table and what can he leverage when it comes to maybe what he would prefer to do. Now, there's a whole lot of holes in all of that, especially how he feels about Nemec, but
Yeah.
it'll be as we get through that. But anyway, what'd you think about that, of what Skeen was doing? Was he setting the stage, or do you think he was
No,
he was just setting more things up for us to understand the characters better?
I agree with you. Like it in retrospective now, in retrospect, I should say, it does look like he was planting seeds of doubt, building kind of an escape plan, and knowing what we know now. I mean, I wouldn't doubt it if he's not done this with all the other players as well, right? Not necessarily pitting them against each other, but just making sure that if it comes down to two people, whoever those two people may be, he's done enough to at least make a case for, hey, you know what? Why don't it just be you and I,
Right.
right? He's conning all of them, in my opinion. But that said, I think there's a little bit of truth in every con, and I think I believe that Cinta was wiped out by stormtroopers. I have no doubt of that. I do believe that Tamarin was a stormtrooper. I think those are things that he can't lie about those things and not um they can be fact checked, right? He
Mhm.
can't put that out there. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think from that perspective, I think he was definitely telling the truth. I want to know more about Tamarin now because I'd like to know, was he there? I doubt he was there, but what did that story look like? Why did he leave the Empire? What was the reason for it? Because
That
I
would
don't think
be
we
that would be interesting if he was on site when it happened, part of the squad.
yeah. So all that is really good. And Cinta's, I think maybe we'll know more about what happened with Cinta's family because she
Dude,
lived.
Cinta, just in general, man, Cinta, she's hard. Like
Well, that's what they said.
she's ruthless. Yeah, I mean, Skeen's assessment of her, we started to see what he's talking about in this episode. She is no nonsense, all business,
Yeah.
when it comes to the mission and whatnot. And to the point whenever Vel was starting to stall, she's like, "What are you doing?"
Yep.
Give it the go. Give it the go. There's no
Yeah.
turning back from this. Just do it. What's wrong with you? And Vel's clearly starting to get nervous and concerned that they're going to make it out, right? It gets real.
hmm
And so it just shows I'm guessing it shows a bit of their inexperience, and we don't know truly how much experience they all have in pulling a job like this off, or really any job. And I have this feeling that this is one of the first really organized, high risk, high profile type of missions that they've done, if not as a team, at individually at all.
All right.
I mean, we know Nemec is green on this one, but it sure doesn't seem like any of the others have known each other a whole lot longer, to where this is something that they've done a lot of these at least that required this kind of planning.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I mean, I think the amount of uh I guess energy or the collaboration that they have, right? The level of collaboration and working together that they have has really just come from routine practice, right? They've probably gone through these scenarios over and over again, but beyond that, I mean, yeah, I don't know that they've been together much longer than that. So the let's there's we get back to the Imperial garrison. I did enjoy that. Well, so sorry, back on Tamarin, like the fact that he knew all the commands, and there was things that he was saying throughout this episode, especially during that training montage, which really wasn't a montage, but there was a lot of things he was saying during that training thing that
Hmm.
he would have to have inside knowledge. You know what
Makes
I mean?
sense. Yeah.
Or someone's fed him this inside knowledge, but it was coming directly from a source of some sort, and that's why I felt like okay, that does pretty much line up. I still want to know why though. I don't. That's the big question for me. But I like the fact of if anybody asks where we're from and they're from Alkenzi, we say we're from Aldhani. If they ask it from Aldhani, then we say from Alkenzi. So
Oldest trick in the
kind of
book.
bulletproof. What's that?
Oldest trick in the book.
Yeah, right.
I'm with
All that
him.
was good. The yeah over there. What? No, over there. Sorry, that's the wrong one. But so we talked about Commandant J. Hold already in his quarters. Do you feel bad? I mean, what was your sympathy level for Robata and
Oh, it
Leonard?
was immense,
Yeah.
for them, because I mean they're just kind of here, that they're this isn't a life that they'd like. It looks like they're probably holed up in this bunker all the time.
Mhm.
I'm sure they get out and about a little bit, but it's clear that J-Hold only cares really about his career or his progression or his lifestyle or whatever it is. His him, and they're just miserable. And it seems like that comes out when he's saying all she does is complain about getting off this rock. She's probably just looking for a better life.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe without him. And
Exactly. Yeah, it's one without him for sure.
right, and just her and the kiddo. And I mean, granted, he's kind of put himself in that position too, it sounds like. But yeah, I had a lot of empathy for them because that sucks. I mean, it's you
Well, and
can't
I was
you can help certain things, but once you're stuck, and it seems like once you're stuck in an imperial relationship, you are stuck for life
mm,
unless you take some really dramatic steps.
yeah, like yeah, like Padme. Kidding, too soon. So, and I did. I was sympathizing for them honestly, and I was worried honestly. Like I was because I wasn't sure how dark we were gonna get, but like if something would, because I mean we had Vader snapping kids' necks, I'm thinking, okay, well,
Yeah.
all you know, anything's on the table at this point. But I'm glad that nothing happened to them that we saw at least, because I think that would have been a little too much.
Vel was
Although at the
Vel was
same
talking
time,
a big game though. I mean, I think if they would have stepped out of line, and I'm curious your opinion about this one. I'll
Bell.
just ask you, yeah, do you think Vel or any of the other ones would have pulled the trigger on either an unarmed person or someone not attacking you or one of the family members if they really weren't getting what they wanted and they couldn't do it?
I mean, now, maybe Skeen, maybe Andor. Because in some levels, and we'll get this, the whole skiing conversation or the whole skiing relationship and his conversation is super interesting. Like there's a lot, I got a lot of thoughts there. But I don't think he was wrong when he said that he said, "Hey, you're just like me," because we saw this right. Andor, when
Yeah.
faced with going to prison, killed somebody, cold blooded, kill someone. That we can't forget that. So when they're backed in a corner, yeah, I can see that. Skiing, absolutely. I think if he was backed in a corner and he had no choice and it was him or the mission, or the mission was at jeopardy or his life was at jeopardy, I don't see why he wouldn't do that. Why he wouldn't get pushed to that level. Maybe Cinta, don't know enough about her. And she is pretty cool hearted, but at the same time, beyond that though, I don't think, anybody else really. Like Cameron probably wouldn't do it. Vel wouldn't do it. Nimic wouldn't do it. So, so yeah, that's my thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't
Um,
really. I don't think they would have done it to the kid or the wife. I think they. I think Vel said it best. He can either give the hand willingly or they can take his hand. Just take the hand and
Right,
leave
we
the
just need
rest.
your hand. We don't need you, dude.
Right.
Although they would have gotten less credits had he not been there. So
True. But they wouldn't have been
the
busted
yeah,
potentially.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, potentially, we don't know
Of
that.
all the times to have a heart attack, really, dude? You
Yeah.
had to wait till then?
Talk about taking the easy way out.
Yeah, roll over and die. Okay, so back to the garrison in the waterfront, which I thought was cool because we finally got confirmation. Well, she didn't get into a TIE fighter, so I apologize for getting everybody excited about that one. But yeah, so their mission was really to be the eyes and ears there for them. Um and that makes sense because they really couldn't. I mean, I guess they could have. I mean, Sintha dressed up, so I don't know why they didn't have her. Maybe they don't have male soldiers on a Kenzie, and that's kind of a known thing. It's not a huge base, you know what I mean? So that may have sparked up questions or whatever,
Right.
picked up some questions.
But
But
as an escape route, just looking like an Imperial amidst the chaos is probably enough to get out.
yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah,
So we got
it
to see
seemed like
them.
they were more the support side, come around the backside and make sure that they've got the other exit covered so no one can get out.
Hmm.
And if something does go awry, and hey, it's like Senta didn't, man, she didn't hesitate.
Nope. I also enjoyed. There was one particular shot when they're on that. They're in the water and
Oh
that
yeah,
they're
looking
using that
up.
tube. Yeah, and that meteor shoots over, and you can see it through the water in the sky.
Really cool shot.
Good stuff, man. Like good on Star Wars. And by the way, I want to say this because I didn't say it up front. I just thought about it right now. Like this was a good episode, regardless of it's Star Wars. I think people are like, oh, for Star Wars it was pretty good. I'm like, no, this is actually, if you think about it, if you really are trying to be objective, it's a pretty phenomenal episode of television. Period. It just happens to be in Star Wars. So
Right.
yeah,
It
we'll
was
let
really
that
good,
first.
especially if you had any kind of connection to the character coming in, which we did.
Yeah. Yeah, which of course we did, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now we're doing 2-hour shows on these things. Okay, so what burned you about? See what I did there? What burned you about the pelts?
No, nothing
The
burned
goat
me.
pelts.
Yeah, nothing burned me about the pelts. It was more at first I thought he was taking the pelt and like, we're gonna rebel too, and threw it into the fire, and they were gonna start a revolt or
That's
whatever.
how I saw it. Is that not what happened? Did
Well,
you
because
have it
I think they threw another one on it. I think it was more they exchange it, and that's this
the first
sacrifice.
one?
Yeah, maybe not a sacrifice, but it's some sort of offering into the fire.
Hmm.
So I didn't necessarily view it as a rebellion of sorts, or for lack of a better word, for the Aldhani people.
Okay.
I think it ended up being more of the religious experience, and that was a part of the ritual, and so that's just what the Empire's been doing to keep them placated.
Okay, so it's a custom that they take that pelt and burn it first.
Yes, I mean, and we knew it was a bit of a this exchange was to help them, basically buy their cooperation effectively.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's how I took
All
it.
right. Well, I was with you. I was with you on the revolution, and burning the pelts. Like and Dante said the same thing. I thought they were going to do their own
I mean,
rebellion
yeah,
too.
everybody probably had that same thing. He's like blah 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 blah, and
Yeah.
then throws it on the fire, and they're all like, "Yeah,
I mean,
let's
if they
get
had
these guys."
15,000 people there, they could have easily overrun the empire. It's just a numbers game at that point. What was it,
Yeah, but
60?
you don't bring a stick to a
Well,
gunfight. Even if you're a
60 people.
stormtrooper, you'll hit something if you got enough to shoot at.
Yeah, right. So I get it. I get it. They probably weren't armed well enough to actually start a rebellion.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
What?
Dante's thrown out there. He thinks ultimately burning the pelts was a screw you to the Empire, saying we don't need your pelts. We don't need your phony offerings or your phony exchanges and
That's
whatnot.
how I took it. Because if you look at the chieftain when he throws it down, he looks angry. Like,
Yeah.
screw this goat pelt. It's lesser quality. This is not even the right kind of goat. Can't believe you did this. Like,
Right.
where did they get the pelt from? The Empire. They just go
They
find a goat and kill it?
I'm gonna go with yes.
Huh.
I mean, there are people that live off the land, so I would presume that's I'm guessing this is a custom of exchanging things, like you said. But yeah, they're more of like, well, screw you, Empire, we don't like it. But
Yeah.
I still think them throwing the pelt on the fire may have some other significance to it.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about this in the Patreon episode because that's what we're going to be breaking down is the pelts, the goat pelts. So
That's right. It's
you got that to look forward
the
to.
pelt breakdown.
I do have a question for you about Vel because you mentioned it earlier. She was stalling.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really have a good theory as to why, outside of just nerves or this is really it. Like this is the moment, and from here on out, all things are gonna just change. But what what was going on there in your mind?
I think it was cold feet. And again, I think it was concern for Cinta. I mean, this is a point of no return for them. And it's a really big job. I mean, this is a big heist. There's a lot riding on it, but I think there's also a lot of real danger. And she started to have a moment of, I don't know if insecurity is the right way, but I mean, just doubt. And I think it really could be as simple as that. I'm not really sure what else to draw from it. And what we got with her and Cinta later on when they part ways, it really just kind of cemented that impression on me at the very least. Did you have another thought on that one?
No, no, I don't. I mean that to me it was really all about just the moment, like I said, and everything changes, which I think they kind of hinted at there at the very end. With the whole Senate meeting and all that, which we'll
Yeah.
come to in a little bit.
But there
But
was no back out plan. And there's the thing. I think that's what Terriman was trying to say, go. I mean, because there's not a no go decision here, right? We go or no go. And there's really no escape plan, it didn't seem like. Maybe for Cinta and Vel, but they're already at the gate. Squad 3 is in formation and there, and they've got their assignment. For them to leave sends off a bunch of red flags. And then you're being hunted. There's no backing out of this. And I think that's what Cinta was saying. It's like, what are you doing? There's no other option. We're going.
yeah, yeah. So Dante says maybe it was her first time as a leader, and it made her hesitate at the moment of action. She overcame it. And then Steph said, "I think it was a great way to show the real humanity of the characters. We all have moments of doubt."
I mean, yeah, and she's responsible, for these people, and she feels responsible for Cinta and probably for Nemec in particular. They're Nemec's probably a kind of a son or a nephew or just this idyllic boy still,
Hmm.
and Cinta's this love of hers and someone that she cares deeply for, and to know that their lives are pretty much at in your palm of your hand, and this is your decision. Whatever happens from here on out, it is really at your feet as the
Yeah.
leader. So I think that's a great observation by Dante.
All right, let's get back into this is where things really start to heat up at this point. And we're back inside the garrison. We get this Mexican standoff, which is a term that's used. It was, I think it predates Tarantino, but he's known for doing this, where everybody's got guns pointing at each other, and it's just a matter of who's going to, blink first. We saw this.
None of the above. Sent from behind.
Well, yeah, it's just like,
or it's always a DFA, man. Death from above. It dominates everything. She had the high ground.
She did have a high ground. It's a good point. I thought it was interesting that Pettigard, of all people, defends the boy, Leonard. Which
was he really
cool.
defending them, or he was just like, "There's no way in hell you're taking my garrison. This is my house."
Well, it was no, this is Pentigard, not Jayhold.
Okay, yeah. Oh yeah, you're right. He did show a little bit of caring.
Yeah, he was like, put the boy down or release the boy kind of thing. He was all about that kid, which I thought was like, oh, that's kind of cool that he did that. I don't know if that was intentional or why, but
I mean, you like to think
unexpected.
that deep down, even the not so great people still have some sort of shred of humanity, especially for their own children.
Yeah.
Even if just a shred.
Yep. We learned that Jayhold he did have access. He was lying about it. We kind of knew that.
He was a very convincing liar, though.
He was. There was a line in here from Vel that I thought was really cool. I don't know if this will come up later, but she says, "One path, one choice. We win or everyone dies. Starts now." Like the conviction in which she says that is also really neat. But I would love for that.
It was scary too.
To become some sort of a mantra at some point, right?
Yeah.
One path, one choice. I don't know if they'll. I mean, I could just be making stuff up here, which is what I do. But if it does come up later on in an episode, or this becomes some kind of a mantra for Luthen or her, I mean, if we don't know how long they're gonna go together and stay together and all that, but it was a pretty cool moment for her at least. So I'm glad to have heard that. We talked about Kemsey bringing communications. I mean, there's all kinds of signals that people are
competent officer.
Yeah, the only one it seemed like at times. We talked about the Vel threatening the family and whether she would have went through with it. I don't believe she would have. I think for her it was more of a veiled threat. She probably would have found other ways to do it. And then we just got that confirmation of Vel and Cinta together, which we had suspected since the sharing a blanket comment was made.
Right.
She sends Clem out first. I thought Diego Luna did a good job with his look.
He's like, what?
Like, wait, what? And so is it because he was the low man on the totem pole, or was it because there was still mistrust about him and making sure that, hey, if at least you're in the front, I've got my eyes on you?
I don't know, to be honest with you, because I thought both ways. I'm like, maybe he was just the natural person to take the lead, although he's supposed to be the pilot. You think you'd want to protect him a little bit, but that's just me. But then again, maybe she felt like Clem had the most experience too, coming out of the elevator, to say that he's going to be the one who's going to look and find the things first.
Yeah.
And I don't know that would be 100% true, but, because a guy like Terriman or someone like that would have been a great person to have with you and then take the lead on that too. But yeah, but I mean, maybe I kind of viewed it that way. Cassian definitely took it that way. Like, what do you mean?
I think he took it like, why me? Okay, I guess you guys don't trust me, but fine, I'll do it.
Well, no, she trusts him just fine. But if someone's going to take the get shot first, it's not going to be one of her people.
Yeah. So it is so the new guy, right? You're the red shirt that showed up. You're going first.
Hey, this is a away mission now.
Yep. The whole exchange with them coming in and getting them in line, having them, Jayhold was in the middle, kind of like they were escorting him. All that was really great stuff. I think it makes sense. So, it's how you would get them to fall in, right? At least from the start, before you pulled guns on them and said, "Hey, the job's changed. Now you got to start loading up all that stuff."
Yeah, it didn't take very long. They just jump right to it.
Yep. We got some confirmation on some of the stuff that we were speculating on the Patreon show with like the blowing up of things. It was really to remove whatever that was holding in the credits.
Yeah, the straps or whatever it was.
Yeah. And then Skeen screams out, "Let's go."
I loved it. That may have been my favorite part of the episode. Let's go.
I know. It's like so.
I love the way he speaks, though. I don't know what it is. His voice and his intonation and just the way that like the cadence is just really cool.
And it's actually it's kind of in. I don't know if you play online games, but uh, everybody screams "Let's go" when something goes well. So
Yeah.
it's relevant to
That's
what the
cute.
kids these
You
days are
don't know
doing.
if I play games, or are you talking to our
I,
vast
I don't. I don't.
community?
Yeah, I don't know if you.
If
I don't know
you
if you
if you
play games.
watch, yeah, I don't know if I play games. Yeah. Anyway, so if you watch Whatnot, a great place to buy and sell comics. Everybody's like, "Let's go." I hate it. It's so annoying. But let's go. Let's do it.
Let's go. Let's do it. Uh, let's see. So they put J-Hole to work, which I thought was kind of
Hey, every hand matters, right? Glad
yeah.
he has two.
Yep.
That would have been tough.
We get that line we were talking about earlier. Where we're heading down to the vault when they're running, and Kimsey says we're heading down the vault, and that kid says the other person in the back says, "But we'll miss the eye. Like we're gonna miss the big event."
Love it.
All that stuff was good, and there's a lot going on here. I'm kind of going through this because it's all. I mean, it's better seen than said for sure. But we get to kind of like probably the quintessential moment for a lot of people. I know a lot of folks were talking about this, and but it is when J Hold J-Hold's look and the way he churns when he hears Gorn's voice,
Yes,
and then the
disbelief.
realization that
Yeah.
he's in on it. I mean, it's just I forget the actor's name who plays J-Hold, but I mean, it's perfect. It is absolutely
You
perfect.
can just tell everything finally makes sense. He's like, "How did they know all this? How did they know that?" How? And then
Yeah,
he's like, "Oh no!"
yeah.
But
And he says, "You'll hang for this," but then we get that quintessential line, and if you want to take it, you
no,
can
go
go.
for it. Yeah, Gorn.
He says, "7 years serving you, I deserve more than that."
Oh,
And I know, I mean, it was just like, I mean, it was all over Twitter and everybody's talking because he finally, it's like the biggest middle finger to him about how much of a jerk he was, and we saw it. I mean, we got to see him even when there wasn't
but it tells you,
contention, he was still being like condescending and just a
right? But
jackass.
but it also tells you the atrocities that Gorn has had to sit idly by or
Right.
help carry out
Exactly.
at the
Yeah.
order of someone like Jay Holder or someone like him in that position of power.
Hmm.
And just the amount of guilt that weighs on you of serving the empire and knowing what you're doing and, potentially wiping out villages of people. I mean, clearly he has, right? And
Yeah.
he's probably got this heavy weight on his heart of knowing Terraman's story, potentially. And maybe he's the one that had to order that to happen. I don't know, but there's just so many things that you could just imagine what he's had to do over 7 years,
Yeah.
even before he was, especially after he finally made the commitment to not be a bad guy, if you will. But you still have to carry the act because what's one person going to do? And can you do more damage from the inside than the out? Maybe, but man, you could just feel it. That was a good burn.
It was a very, very good burn. The I should the cutting that's happening here. So Susanna White, editing team, right? The way she's cutting back and forth to all of us, it just keeps building up the tension.
Oh, the
And
editing on this one was masterful.
yeah,
Absolutely masterful.
even the scenes with the
Except the
tribes
end.
people, right?
Yeah.
Well,
The end it was a little less than inspiring, but whatever.
I've got questions about the ending.
Okay.
But yeah, the way it was cutting back and forth, and then so we were getting scenes with Cinta and the family, and then we were cutting to the villagers, and they seemed to be getting more what's the word?
Animated and excited. Yeah.
Sure,
Getting ready for the
yeah,
big event.
riled up, if you will, for the big moment. We've got the meteorites flying overhead. We've got people jumping into TIE fighters at this point. Everybody's screaming about the credits and all that, and then on top of all that, that Kimsey's going to catch up with him, and sure enough, this is where he comes down. And that tension at that point is just like, whoa. And I love this whole scene beginning to end because Gorn, without a step, jumps into his role, right? Like, hey, you don't need to be down here. This is an unauthorized mission. You don't have the rights, etc. And then he starts trying to get homeboy over here, J-Hold, to help out to kind of reinforce that they need to leave. And had he not died, I think he probably would have been able to get away with it. Maybe I don't. Well, maybe not. But he died. And that was enough for like, okay, something's well, I mean, he was already kind of all sweaty and everything too. I mean, they probably never seen, the commandant look like that ever.
Right. Well, they probably never seen the commandant work.
Yeah, so there's a lot
Probably
of
why he
red
was so
flags.
confused. He's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. So
I'm trying to get that belt to fit.
yeah. So yeah, but so I want to get to who lived and who died later. Let's save that to the very end because
Okay.
Gorn gets so this is when we have J-Hole dies and then there's a big shootout that happens, right? Gorn gets shot. A little bit later, Tamarin gets shot. Taramin gets shot. Kimsey goes down. There was Cassian almost getting choked out had it not been for Nimic.
Right.
Which
Yeah, this is the guy that Cassian actually like nudges in the back to get going and gives him the the evil eye look, and you can see when Cassian goes into the ship, he's down there on the stairs. So you just
kind of
knew,
hiding.
yeah, you knew something was about to go down.
Yeah, there's there's probably a few reasons why now Cassian is going to subscribe to this hero of the rebellion kind of thing. Probably because of the manifesto, but you also have to keep in mind that he knows that Nimic saved his life, right? So he does in that regard. I mean, I think a lot of people question why did he even take the manifesto at the very end. Part of it is because of that. I think that Cassian acknowledges that he wouldn't be there if it hadn't been for Nimic, and what's the harm in taking this thing? Just I need to get out of here, and so he does it for Nimic more than anything. Is really what happens, and because of this event. So if that helps you sleep at night,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So and then we get into the ship, the trawler, and they take off, and Nimic getting paralyzed,
I
or
did not see that coming. I mean, to get
no,
crushed like that and to hear the crunch,
yeah.
like, oh
Well,
man.
we were talking about this not going well.
Yeah, of course it wouldn't. Nothing goes well.
Nothing goes well. And them having to leave everybody too, like leaving Gorn and leaving Terramin behind it is pretty significant a little bit later. But yeah, so we know that Cassian can't fly without the numbers, and we get the whole med spike thing, which I guess would be the equivalent of like an adrenaline.
Yeah, pretty
Um,
much like an EpiPen or something like that. Something to, again, just kind of juice you up is really all she was doing, just buying him time to make him coherent.
right, so they could give out the coordinates.
Right. Because whatever the box was telling him about, and I don't know if it was, he was gauging, because if you remember a few episodes ago when he was first looking at this box, it was like you can detect things. Right. And so maybe that's what he was doing. He was able to detect the trajectory of all of the objects around them to know where the path was going to be, just to be able to escort them. Now, they didn't have to move around a whole lot, so I guess it was worked out pretty well. But yeah, I could see why without any kind of navigation or navigator, he's definitely flying blind. He had no idea what was going on. I mean, you could just see he was just wide-eyed, like, oh my, how do I keep us alive? Like, stuff is hitting the windshield till like you can still see the cracks in the windshield, forming. And of course, that's what took out a couple of TIE fighters. And then when you get the TIE fighters on your butt, man, you're in a tough spot.
Mm-hmm. To the chat, Dante says, I loved how scared Skeen looked in the shootout. It showed he was a little more talk than he had let on and foreshadowed what happened later. Lauren says, the crush was hard to watch.
Was. Yeah.
Don't disagree there. So I'm going to talk about, let's talk about Skeen just real quick since, well, Dante brought him up, but it's in the show notes too. So Skeen seems to be, in my opinion, genuinely concerned with Nimic.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
I think he's like his little brother.
Maybe that's one way I could see that. But he's really upset at Vern because in Vern's mind, I mean,
Val.
as much as we were talking about her being like a leader and wanting to, nervous about her being in this role for her crew, I did get the sense that she was kind of like, let's cut the dead weight and move on. Like we can't afford this because it's too risky now, even if it was in the contingency plan.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean that ruthlessness. I mean, again, I don't know why it would have mattered quite at that moment, but I think Vel was scared. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I think Vel was scared. Things took a turn that they were hoping it wouldn't take. You're never quite prepared, and I think this is kind of what Dante was saying too. That you think you're prepared for these types of things. You think you're prepared for a firefight, but you never really are until you're in it and you're experiencing it, and you're just like, this is, what do I do? And again, all the weight's on her to make the decision. She's the decision-making authority for the most part. And I imagine it was really hard for her to watch what was going on in the Namek. And she knew that it was hopeless too, right? And so to slow them down, if you think about it pragmatically and logically, what she wanted to do made some sense. Was it a bit heartless and cold? That there's definitely an argument for that. But she was definitely trying to look out for the rest of the team too, saying, okay, no, we've got to make this. We've got to be here. We got to be on time. We know Cinta hopefully is still out there. And so whatever the plan is with Cinta, to be able to recover her as well and meet back up. So, I mean, there's all these other things. And if they were to send some sort of pursuit out there, were they far enough away? Were they out of the way enough to where using that contingency is a contingency for a reason? You don't want to use it, but again, I kind of agree. I think this was the right thing to do. And Andor definitely felt the same way and agreed with Skeen. I think Skeen legitimately cares and cared for for Nemec.
Yeah.
And I think Skeen, to an extent, and I think maybe this is what broke him a little bit too, and made the decisions more clear for him to make, was that Nemec was kind of that person in the group that kind of keeps everyone honest. Everyone kind of looks to that person and are like, man, you were just the purest of all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they all understand their flaws, but they still kind of want to be, and they look to this one person of, as long as they're there, I have my guiding light. I have my firebrand. I have my North Star. If you want to use your your High Republic again this week.
Yeah.
They're my guiding light. And when that light is extinguished, you're scared because you don't know who you're left to your own devices. Mm-hmm. Especially if you look around the room and you're like, I don't know if I trust any of these people. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to go back to trusting me. Now, I don't know what he would have done if Nemec lived. I believe he probably would have stuck around. But at the same time, without him, he didn't want him to die, but because again, all of this was because what he enabled them to do, and to cast him aside. And he's the only reason why they even got this far, and the only reason why they survived. I agree with him entirely. It's like, you don't leave a brother behind, basically, mm-hmm. unless you just really have no other choice. And they had a choice here, a very easy choice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he says that exact line. This kid is the reason we are here. And you can take that a couple different ways.
You can take it all the ways. Yeah.
Yeah. You can take it literally in the sense that, with his tech and his navigation, they survived something that they probably shouldn't have, given the complexity and all that. Right. That's one way to take it.
Right.
The kid is the reason we're here. From an ideology kind of perspective, he represents the future. He represents, the approach that we need to take, the mentality we need to take. Um, you know, he is kind of like that every man, and speaks for all of us in that regard, right? So you can take it either way, honestly. And it still holds true. I love the fact that he was sincere about it, because I don't, he's the only character, in my opinion. I, this is the Nemec is the only character that I think Skeen would have really put his trust and faith into. Like, I think he would have turned on any one of the other characters.
I agree. I mean, yeah. And clearly it was definitely part of the plan in some regard.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm curious if Nemec would have been uninjured in there, what was Skeen's plan? Was it something that he would have stuck around longer, or was he really just going to have to do it a different way of cutting run and stealing a little bit of money on the side? Because, he still was very much, I'm looking out for numero uno. There's only one. I'm a rebel. I'm a rebel against everything.
Yeah.
I'm just a self-centered person, I guess. But again, something about Nemec made him act a little bit differently at the very least, or kept some of that at bay. I'm really curious what he would have done without Nemec. I mean, with Nemec, if he would have survived.
Yeah. The short answer is I think he would have still cut and run.
I think so too.
But
he wouldn't have been as extreme about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of money. Was it
80
million?
80 million, man. Yeah. So you called it, man. It was millions, tens of millions. It was a lot. And they didn't really take a whole lot.
They took like two sides of it or whatever, two stacks.
Yeah. Man, there was a lot of credits down there. I love all the jingling they did too. You could hear them jingling all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Cold hard cash. Okay, so we get into this unknown planet and the doctor's name is Dr. Quadpaw.
I know, right?
That's really his name in the credits, so that was kind of cool.
Thought it was Dr. Quadmaz.
Quadmaz.
Quadnata.
Daz Quadnata. So
That's just silly, Albert. Gosh.
Okay, that's stupid. Why are you I think we got the needle right. Like we said, that needle was like for
some sort of
epidurals or whatever,
right.
something in the spine. So we got that right. But
Yeah.
let's and of course I don't know what there is to say about Nemec dying. I want to talk more, I guess, about this conversation, and I have quite a bit of notes. So it'll probably be about 30-minute conversation about that this conversation between Skeen and Andor.
Mhm.
I think Andor first mentions it that we got a little bit lucky, or he says we got a little bit lucky. Right? It was a little bit of luck. He says, "Yeah, luck drives the whole damn galaxy, doesn't?" And this keeps happening in Star Wars. They keep saying that, and every time they talk about luck, I always think about Kenobi saying, "My experience, there's no such thing as luck."
Right.
And I think Lucas has kind of said the same thing, that when the way luck works in the galaxy far, far away is really just the Force, the will of the Force, the living Force in some way, helping guide things and kind of help making choices for us. But he does call back up that whole conversation that he had with Andor, talking about how he wanted to win and walk away, and he's using that, right. He's now weaponizing that as a way to get him on board with, this is how you can walk away. You know, you can walk away. You can walk away and retire, live whatever life you want to live, and never have to worry about anything ever again, because 80 million is a lot of credits in the galaxy. It's a lot of credits, guys. I don't know if anybody. I don't know how much you're up on what you can buy with 10,000 credits.
Yeah,
but
10,000. You can almost buy a whole ship for that.
there, set and spike. But think about that. Yeah, 80 million. It's a big chunk of change.
It's a big chunk of change. Yeah. And again, if you go back and flash back to why does he call out Andor and grab the crystal, the Kyber, and all these other things? And while I think there was some fear to some of that of his own cold feet, I think it was also somewhat confirmation and Skeen setting his mind in motion about, okay, I've got another mercenary here that's willing to just make the cash and take it and run. That's important to me. Now, why he played it that way, I don't know, but maybe this was the backup plan after he had more time to think about it.
Mm-hmm. So I think the question that everybody's been talking about, or at least one of the more heated questions, and we haven't had one of these in a long time, which is really cool in Star Wars land. Although people have, of course, taken it to the extreme.
No,
but it's really this question of why was Andor so quick to kill him? I was in a whole thread about this with several people, and I think I won. Like, I think I convinced them.
Okay, so what was your argument?
But I'm not gonna.
You teased it up.
But I'm not here to convince you.
No, please do.
I want to hear your thoughts first. I want to hear what you think. Like,
no, I want to hear this convincing argument before you tell me I'm wrong. I want to know if I'm wrong going into it.
Well, I think in summary, it was a very long thread, but in summary, I would say the turning point for Andor. Okay, you've got to put yourself in Andor's position. He has no allegiance to any of these folks, right? He agreed to do this for, was it 30,000 credits or whatever his number was?
200.
Was it
200,000?
200,000? Okay, fine. 200,000.
He was going to pay 30,000 for the ship that he saw in the doctor's ship. Yeah, but yeah, 200K was his cut.
So then he's sitting there with this guy, and he's listening to this guy, and this guy is telling him there's so many red flags that I think people are overlooking. The minute he said that I'm a bit of a rebel too, he said it's me against everybody else. Okay, so if that's really the case, then he can't be trusted, right? He's already proven that he can't be trusted, and you can say yes, he had. I still believe that you cannot be trusted, but still care for somebody like Nemec, right, and still want to see this mission through. But then on top of that, he says probably the most damning line for him, which was, "I didn't have a brother."
Yeah.
So for Andor now to feel like, wait a minute, you use that, to get an emotion out of me, and that whole conversation, that whole exchange, and how they were, upset with one another and all that. I mean, it's a blatant lie, trying to get sympathy from people,
and he
right,
says it with a smug satisfaction almost.
Yeah,
which is just sickening, because Andor has a sister.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and there was somebody that was in this argument that I was having today.
Mm-hmm.
Someone was saying, "Well, he's not lying. He doesn't have a brother. He's dead." I'm like, "No, dude, that's not what's happening." Okay. I get it.
This
You could
isn't
use
from a
that.
certain point of view all of a sudden. No,
I can understand where
the
somebody
SOB
would think that.
lied to make a point. Because
Yeah.
remember what he said? He goes, well, Vel wanted me to come over here and tell you about my brother. That line's complete BS now. And we know
Yeah,
for a
it is.
fact it's BS.
Yep. And then he says we're both in a hole, and all we know is climbing over somebody else to get out. Right. So again, now this is the third red flag about, well, if we're both in a hole and we're both climbing out, I'm somebody that you're going to climb on at some point to get out as well. So he's not building a case for him.
Well,
And then
and it's someone else that is telling Cassian Andor who they think he is. That's a trigger for Andor. You don't know anything about me. You've known me for 2 days, and now you're going to tell me that we're just alike, and you're the one about to bail on this kid that's dying, that you said, is everything we fought for because of this kid, and now you're doing this. Yeah, flag.
Right. And I think the last, like the nail in the coffin, what really pushed him over the edge was that last piece that he never finished saying. But in my head, Andor's thinking all these things and going, okay, so where is it that he's going to take me out? Like at some point he's going to, and then in my opinion, it feels like, at least from Andor's perspective, he signals when this is going to happen, because he says, we're going to put that thing home, catch our breath, split the winnings, right? Catch our breath means we're going to go hang out somewhere for a little bit first. Right then and there, for me, that's like, I'm done. Like, that's exactly where he's probably going to take me out. There's no question in my mind at this point.
Right. Does he have another ship waiting for him? I mean, he knows he just can't fly the ship.
It's a place that I've got, right?
Yeah.
I ain't going to that place. I don't trust you.
That's like saying in a horror movie, hey, let's go to the barn with all the hardware hanging up on the side.
Yeah.
A great idea.
So I don't know. To me, it feels like it was pretty self-explanatory, or very it was reasonable. I know people are still bothered by the fact that he just killed another person. He's already done it.
Yeah, he pulled it's like a Han Solo moment, right? And that, let's be honest, I mean, Han shooting, Beckett still rubs some people the wrong way, that Han's a cold-blooded killer, right? I mean, we have a friend that would beat this into our head, that Han's a cold-blooded killer, and we're like, no, Han learned a lesson. And I think Andor was triggered. I think he was having a little bit of PT. I mean, again, his sister is missing. This guy's lying about this to manipulate people, and then he thinks he knows him, that Andor would lie to manipulate people, just because he had a front, although he's kind of told the front to do, and he feels like he's kind of stuck doing this job. But and then again, the duplicitous nature of what Skeen would say about Nemec, and then completely throwing all of that away, that this kid is in there probably dying, about to die, and you are completely, like the officers were outside of the little cave that Vel and Cinta were in, just peeing all over everything.
Yeah.
It just didn't sit with him. He's like, no, enough, done. I'm not, you're like, there's no room in this galaxy for filth like you. And he just took that action and just did it. I mean, it's hard not to understand why he did it. We could argue about whether it was right or wrong, or whether it was just, but I don't think you're right on the money, man. You and I are 100% aligned on this whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, I feel very passionately about this too, because I knew there was somebody that could be like, no, I don't think this. I'm like, no, come on.
Yeah. No.
Like he thought he knew Cassian Andor, and Andor just showed him like, no, you don't know me, buddy.
Right. I mean, there's also, I haven't really thought about this too. I was just thinking about it right now, but there's probably some risk and liability in letting somebody like that out there in the wild. Like if he finds out Andor is wanted by the, Empire, of all the people that are still alive, would Skeen turn him in?
Right.
I think he would.
Well, and if you're Andor, are you worried now that Vel is the same way? Is Vel really doing the same thing? And so you take him out, because if he just knocks him out or just hauls him in, what's to say she's not going to pull a blaster on him right then and there either? From his perspective at that moment, while we don't think that would be the case with Vel, he doesn't know. And he's in this position of feeling like he's in survival mode, because he pretty much is. Because he knows if he says no to all of this, what's about to go down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you pull the trigger first. Just ask Han Solo.
Yeah, yes, Han Solo. But he does put himself in a precarious predicament, because now he's got to go in and explain to Vel what's exactly happened. And he comes in with the gun. I like that he says it's not what you think. Like, I'm not here to kill you. It's nothing like that at all. I think he does the right things by saying, "Look, I did my job. I just want my cut. I want to get out of here. Nothing to do with all this." But I think he's in a pretty bad position. And I'm curious to see how this plays out with Luthen once Vel lets him know. Luthen, we can talk about that here in just a second. But his willingness to hand over that kyber crystal to Luthen makes me think that he's out. He's done. Like, so how are they going to pull him back in at this
Right.
point? You know,
Exactly. That's a good
um,
point. And I was curious that, but I think to what you just said though, it just proves that Andor's like, no, I don't want any part of this. This sounded like it was a good thing. It went to crap pretty much the day I showed up. You guys didn't know what you were doing. I almost died 12 times today. And then you have this other clown over here saying that, I grew to care. So I opened myself up to a couple of people. They die. And then this person over here is telling me that he just doesn't care about any of it. It was just going to, take 40 million credits and run, regardless of this boy who actually believed in a cause and you lied to him too. And now you're going to steal money off of his dead body,
yeah,
effectively. And he's just like, if this is the rebellion, I want nothing to do with it. I'll go back to doing whatever I want on my own. It's opened my eyes to some things. Maybe he's more committed to the cause now of fighting the Empire, but not like this, not with these types of people. And if this is what it is, screw you guys, I'm out.
yeah,
It's hard not to feel that way, right?
hmm
If you're in his position.
yeah. So so he's got the manifesto now.
Yeah, this was fun. Yeah, that was a
We're gonna.
nice call, by the
So,
way.
well, thank you. I don't have them often, but I do like. So again, even then, this theory that I had of him taking the manifesto and it being something that's a catalyst for him. Usually in real life, it's somebody who gets no, I hate to say it, it's not exactly this, but there's some level of incarceration, whether it's a physical incarceration, they're in prison somewhere, or
Some sort of
they're
solitude. Yeah.
yeah, some kind of solitude, or they're living this horrible life and they've got only this book to read, and so they become, you know,
Indoctrinated into whatever they're
indoctrinated
reading.
because
Yeah.
of it. Yeah. So that got me thinking, it's like, okay, well, maybe they expedite that. But then I thought, well, what if there's a time jump? What if we flash forward like a year later and those scenes of him in a prison? Because I'm thinking like, okay, he's in a prison, right? But yet we know he's going to go back to Ferrex, and we've got the whole story with Saul. We've got Ferrex. We've got 6 episodes left. When is this prison thing happening? Like I don't, unless it's a flashback. But if they started again, you can put tinfoil hats on if you want to. But what if they started this next episode? He's episode 7, and it's been, I don't know, 6 months or at a minimum, right? Or maybe it's been a year. Still within the time frame, we can still do this, but he's been in prison. Maybe they don't even know that's really his name. He might be under some pseudonym, right? And they've been in prison, but he has his manifesto with him, and that's the time that he's now had to read this. And there is a prison break that happens, right? That's orchestrated by somebody like Saw Gerrera, because Luthen came to him and said, "I need Cassian Andor. You got to break him out," kind of thing. I'm trying to back into a way that we get Cassian Andor reading from the manifesto, being indoctrinated into the ideology of being a rebel as Nimmick saw it, without us having like voiceovers of Nimmick reading it. You know what I mean? Or it's happening in real time over the course of next 6 episodes.
Well, if you're in prison, they're not going to let you keep that book. So I'm going to, if they allowed someone to keep a manifesto about rebelling against the Empire while you're in an imperial prison or in any prison,
hmm
I severely question the competency of whoever is doing anything in that organization, because that's just dumb. You collect all your things, you get them when you check out, type of thing.
hmm
But I think, and so I don't hate the idea, to be honest with you. I don't mind us doing a small time jump, forward. I think time is a bit precious here for us because we know we have 18 more episodes to go for the series. And so we know we're only we're 5 years away, and that seems like a long time, but really we're probably going to do a series of time jumps at some point. It would just make more sense, right? For us to have to do this. So I think that's okay to do that. But I think eventually we come back to Ferrex, because we know he has to get back to Ferrex, because the way that sounds like where Deidre is going to catch up to him. We got to get Bix back involved. We know we need to get Cyril, and Cyril is on the chase for him. And where's the first place you're going to go is likely going to be Ferrex where you last left him, and to see if he goes back, especially if there's some sort of smoking gun that we had before.
Oh yeah, they're going to shake down all his friends and everybody.
Sure, yeah. And so, but again, 6 months down the road, sure. I mean, it'd be cool if he was in there reading a book. I'm not sure about because again, why would they let you keep it? But
maybe they don't know about it.
Movies and he's wearing a jumpsuit. They've done the bodily investigations. So I mean,
outside of that, I don't know. I've seen Shawshank. Okay. All right. Well,
everything Albert Padilla learned was from the movies.
That's a great movie, by the way.
It is a great movie. You're right.
One of the best movies ever made. Okay, let's move on to the last couple scenes quickly here. So Coruscant, we go to the ISB building. Deidre, he kind of pulls what's his name, Major Partagas pulls like an all hands meeting and basically says no one leaves tonight until. Interesting though, he says until he wants every star sector and planetary emergency retaliation plan in the building ready by midnight. What is going on here? What do you think he's going to do?
Well, I think he's going to send a Star Store at the very least, because we know that was in the trailer, right? We
that's
looked at
going
that earlier
there,
this
right?
week. Yeah, I mean,
but I mean, do you think he's really like? This seems very Empire. So I'm not.
Yeah, it
arguing.
does seem very
I can see him
Empire,
doing it, right? But the knee jerk reaction of just send all these Star Destroyers out. Let's send a message to all of any and every one of these folks that have been bucking up against us here in the last couple of years. Kind of thing. Is that really what he's doing here? Are we going to see it? That'd be cool.
I mean, that's what he's saying, it sounds like, and again, this goes back to, is this a Navy issue, a military issue, or is this really the Security Bureau that really does these? They're usually the ones doing the investigation, right? They're not the cops in the field, so to speak, if you will. They're the ones trying to actually get all the information and get all the data and the detective type of aspect of the force. So it's interesting that they would be the retaliation, own the retaliation plan. But I think with the Empire, I think it's this knee-jerk reaction too of no one does this to us, and no one does it in our house, and no one steals our money, type of thing. It's very much a mob type of mentality, right? Of
I want his family dead. I want his family dead.
Exactly. I mean,
that's from Untouchables, I think.
I can't remember, but I mean, it's that type of thinking though that no one does this to us, and part of guys this is probably his. This is under his jurisdiction or his mandate, for things like this when it happens. They're looking for someone to blame. So you want to damn well make sure you go out there and, prove a point that you're not going to do that. Someone's not going to do this again if you can't find them.
Well, so remember, let's go back to what Partagas said too, right? He said they were, the health system. That their job, like even if for whatever, whether you disagree or agree, or whether what the ISB should be doing, at least in his mind, the guy that's running this whole thing, in his mind, their whole job is to effectively go out and prevent illness, right?
Yeah, they're the clinic. Yeah,
he's a clinic, right? He's the healthcare system, if you will, and so they're reacting to a virus. They're reacting to some kind of bacterial cold or whatever in his mind. Again, I'm using his analogy. I'm not making this up.
Sure.
So
the medicine's a Star Destroyer, by the way. Don't know if you knew that.
It's about to be a heavy dose of it too, right? You want to get in. He's trying to get in front of this. Is really what he's trying to do, to make sure that he send a message. This will not be tolerated. We will not allow this to continue to happen. Even if, and really what he's doing, he's backing up. He's reinforcing Deidre's thoughts here, right?
Exactly. This is her path in, right?
I think so
her credibility is about to go up quite a bit if she's able to make the right argument here. Like, look, Major, these are the things we're seeing, and these are the types of paths, and they're getting more bold. I don't know if you knew this, Albert, but pockets of fermenting.
You just like that word.
Just like the way he says
okay,
it.
well,
It's great.
We'll see what happens there, and then we end on the Luthen shop, which
was the Senate first.
Did we? Oh yeah, I skipped over the Senate. Sorry.
That's because the Senate was pretty sad.
It was.
No one was in there. Well, yeah, no one was there in the first place, and then the news started sharing.
Yeah, you're right. It is. I mean, it's a combination of like no one's there. It sounded like even the people that were there. I mean, were they really listening to her?
No.
In my head, no.
Again, most of them weren't even there.
Yeah, and I think the ones that are there honestly are probably getting churned over by or falling in line with the Empire, right? They're probably feeding their pocketbooks, empowering them,
Or they have other
right?
business on the docket. They're just waiting their
Exactly.
turn.
Yeah. So they're like, whatever. I'm not in this for the Gormans. Which the Gormans keeps coming up. That's been twice now that she's mentioned that.
Yeah.
And there's a Rebels episode where what's the one where they meet Mothma? Mothma. She's talking about the Gormans in that episode too, and I forget the contents of it.
Yeah.
The context of it.
It was
But
a good Easter egg.
yeah, it was. They're kind of calling back to that. So
Right.
I need to look into that because I forgot all about what the heck was going on.
But then we
there.
do get the Senate chambers do start to reach a fevered pitch. And presumably
Yeah,
that's
'cause
when
the
the
news is
news
breaking out.
exactly, yeah, the news is starting to break.
Mm-hmm. And no one's listening to her at
Right.
that point.
And then we jump over to Luthen's shop. And I think he thought he was busted there for a second. What do you mean, Aldhani? You know, do you have any pieces from Aldhani? Whoa, what are you talking about? What about Aldhani? What's all over the news? You know, no big deal. But yeah, then he goes back and he is thrilled. Because if it made the news, you know, and people are in shock, then presumably it was a positive result. And so he knows
I don't know about that
it's
laugh
a new
though.
day.
There was something about his laugh that I couldn't tell.
So
Is he happy?
how did you view it then? Like what were your impressions from it?
It looked like he was coming from a place of concern at first, right? But maybe the realization that so it did finally happen and that people are talking about it. But I was this mission a success? I mean, I guess they got the money, so maybe that's really what he's focused on. But I think to me, it feels like he is exposed, and he's really exposed now at this point because he's got people that are dead, laying there that were left over. We don't know what happens to Vel at this point. I mean, I guess she does make it back at some point, right?
Right.
We see her a little bit later on, but Andor's gone, and I think that's the one thing with Andor leaving, and he's turned over the Kyber crystal. You know, that's a loose end that I don't know how he doesn't know all this, right? I get that. I mean, I get he doesn't know all this, but he's going to find out.
I viewed his reaction though as one of, I think, a little bit of disbelief and relief creeping in because it finally happened. It sounds like this is maybe their first, I don't know if I'd call it a major strike, but maybe it's a significant effort for the first time.
Yeah.
In the way that the rebellion is structured right now, or the way that it's actually operating. Mm-hmm. And it's also a relief for him because now he has that precious, you know, presumably, I think in his mind, he has this idea that now they have funding. Now they have flexibility. They have a big win under their belts that is going to pay dividends for it in the long run.
Yeah.
Now but like you said, he doesn't quite understand the cost of what came from it, but I think he's a realist. He knows that not everybody's going to make it out of this, right? And I had a feeling he probably thinks that a guy like, you know, Gorn was probably one that wasn't going to make it. But I think, yeah, a bit of disbelief and a bit of relief and like, oh my gosh, this actually worked, you know, type of feeling. And oh my gosh, this actually worked. You know, and I think that's where the laughing came from and the excitement. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Lauren says relief that at least it's done. And he does exhale at the very end, like it's the last thing that you hear him exhale, like now what?
Yeah, exactly. Now what?
So,
amazing episode. Amazing.
Amazing.
Episode.
I agree. But so the only quick questions I have, because we'll probably pick some of this up on the Patreon episode as well, because I do want to get into, not tonight, we got to be good about this, but I do want to talk about, do we think that Vel believed Cassian's story, right? That's one question that needs to be answered. Right. But in terms of who died, like, do you think somebody like Gorn or Terramin, either one of those guys lived?
I'm gonna go
the
with no.
implications of them living are pretty big.
Yeah, they are. I'm gonna go with no. But I could see why some people might believe yes, because like you said, it would be a loose end that would start to pull everybody together. I don't know that they need any more. I don't think the Empire needs any more breadcrumbs to go and sort this thing out. I think someone like Deidre is going to say that happened there, but we just had this event over on Ferrix. Something is going on. I'm going to start retracing steps and to see what happened. Yeah. You know, and starting piecing that together and see what we stumble on as we go. There's got to be some sort of security going on. She knows that, and she's going to find Cyril, so she knows she's going to start putting things together. So I don't think we need them to be alive. My guess is that those loose ends are probably okay, and they're lying still, so to speak, and they're not going to go anywhere. And it's not a concern. I think they truly did look pretty dead.
Okay. I would be okay if they died and they were just dead. I think
Sad.
it would be sad, sure. Of course, yes. Very sad. But so Gorn passing, I think I'm okay with this story, although I'd love to know more about it, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But the fact that they've teased us now with Tamarin as being, or Taramin, sorry. Taramin being a former stormtrooper, that would be the one that if he was captured and they were able to identify him, what would they do to him? What would they ask him? That sort of thing. Maybe we get more background now. They kind of say, oh yeah, he was this or whatever. And then, I don't know, they tell us why he left. But that's, that he leads to Vel, and Vel leads to Luthen. So it's another loose end. And I am kind of leaning on some of the stuff that we talked about that's still to come, where we know that Luthen is, quote, losing his edge, making mistakes,
right,
and all that. So it could be a series of things. It could be one thing we don't know yet, but that would be interesting for them to pursue. So I'd like to see that he lived, if any of them did live.
Okay, so before we go, people and Gene mentioned it, so we need to look and see how did we do on our death calls. Do you have the notes up from last week?
I don't.
Okay, well,
I can tell you.
Yeah, some of these we know. I'll just call the name out, and we'll try to recall who we said was going to live or who was going to die. So, Nemec, we both said was going to die.
Yep,
we
got
both,
that one right.
Both got that one right. Taramin, I believe you said he would die. I said he would end up living. So, Albert's up 2-1 now. Keep score at home. Cinta, you said Cinta would die.
I said Cinta would die.
She lived. So we're back.
Did you say she lived?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 2-2.
All right.
We both said Vel would live.
All right.
Skeen, you said would live. I said he would die. Now, he didn't die in the heist, but he sure as hell died. Yep. So I'm up 4. We both said Andor would live. So did we get that? Gorn. What did we say about Gorn? I think we both may have. I don't know if we talked about him. I think we both probably would have said that he's probably dead.
I think you said he would live, and I said he would die. So we're even.
So we're a tie.
So it's a tie. All right.
And then who else? Are we missing anybody? Did we get everybody?
I think that was it.
So anyway, so well done. We had all of our bases covered. But
no, you won.
That was fun.
I'll take the loss.
You'll take the L.
But I called the manifesto. So that's.
And you did, yeah. So the bonus question, you did get that. So I tell you what, I'll call it a tie because that was a good creative call that I would have probably overlooked. So well done, sir.
Same to you, sir.
Thank you. You know what we should do? We should do a little shout outs and call it a show.
Let's do that.
All right. If you're listening to this on the podcast, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading it. We do have a live stream every Tuesday and Thursday at around 9:00 Central Time. CantinaCast.com/YouTube. In the chat with us tonight. Thank you all for being here. Jonathan, Sky, Lauren, Steph, Rod, Katya, Jorge, Dante, and Gene. Again, thank you all for coming out. CantinaCast.com/YouTube if you want to check out the channel, like it, and subscribe it so you get notified for everything. And again, if you're curious about Patreon, we invite you to come out and watch the live stream on Tuesday is the current schedule for that one, again on 9 p.m. CantinaCast.com/Patreon if you are curious about the tiers and would like to sign up and maybe an opportunity to come onto the show. And Albert, remind us what we're going to talk about on Tuesday. Terrorism, right?
Yeah, so I want to talk about manifestos. I want to talk about terrorism. We're going to break that open, but I do want to. There are some questions that I still have that are kind of open questions for the series, and so I want to take those to the Patreon show as well. So we'll probably start with that, and then get into this boring stuff about manifestos and all that. But I promise I'll make it interesting and make it relevant to Star Wars. So
I don't believe you, but anyway, I'm kidding. But anyway, yeah, thanks everyone so much tonight. We had a great time, and hope you did too. And man, episode 7. This is in episode 7 coming up. Again, this is when we thought things would start to pivot a little bit. So really curious where we go from here. We've again, the 3-episode arc. I guess I was wrong again. Definitely feels like we're doing some things in these 3-episode arcs. So
yeah,
we'll see what's coming up next. We'll see if this is really that transitional episode or not.
Cool. All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight, and see you guys on Tuesday.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.